Have you ever stopped to think that every tattoo a woman carries might be a silent scream from the unconscious? That the butterfly on the shoulder, the phrase on the arm, or the phoenix on the back are not just aesthetic choices, but scars painted to hide pains that no one dares to see. Freud said that the body speaks where the mind is silent. And today you will understand why many women turn their skin into a secret diary where every line, every color, is a psychological defense against traumas that were never overcome. If you think tattoos are just fashion or empowerment, get ready, because in this video, we are going to dive into the female mind according to Freud and discover the truth that no one talks about: the dark psychology behind the symbols that flow on the skin. If topics like psychology, philosophy, and the darkness of the human soul interest you, subscribe to the channel now. There are pains that do not scream, they just engrave themselves. Freud said that when the mind cannot find words to express a trauma, the body takes on the role of messenger. And tattoos, many times, are exactly that: a silent writing of the unconscious. It is not just about aesthetics or fashion, but a desperate attempt to give form to what cannot be spoken, to transform an invisible pain into something that can be seen, touched, admired, and somehow controlled. Every line of ink is like a trace of an internal battle, a scar turned into art so that the wound ceases to be just suffering and becomes a story told in silence. Imagine a woman with a butterfly tattooed on her shoulder. For many, it is just a symbol of beauty, freedom, transformation. But from a Freudian perspective, the butterfly can be a scream trapped in childhood, a memory encapsulated in the form of a drawing. Freud teaches us that the unconscious always finds a way to manifest itself, whether in dreams, slips, repetitive behaviors, or symbols. In this case, the tattoo can work as a substitutive formation, a mechanism that transforms emotional pain into something visible and, at the same time, bearable. It does not just display a beautiful image, but the attempt to tame the internal chaos that consumes her. The body, for Freud, is a stage of repressed desires, frustrations, and forgotten memories. And when a woman marks her skin with symbols of rebirth, phoenixes, or mystical eyes, she may be unconsciously narrating a chapter of her story that she herself cannot explain in words. The ink works as a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, between what she wants to show the world and what she has never managed to reveal even to herself. Many times, what we see as empowerment is, in fact, an attempt to survive. These tattoos can also be seen as armor. Freud spoke of the concept of reactive formation, which happens when the ego builds the opposite of what it feels to avoid collapse. A woman who displays phrases of strength, symbols of courage, or images of overcoming may actually be hiding the fragile and unprotected girl that no one defended. By tattooing something that represents power, she is in fact defending herself from the fear of being seen as weak or vulnerable. The tattoo then becomes an aesthetic mask, a wall that protects a soul marked by wounds that still bleed. But there is also a function of control. Many women who were ignored, abused, or silenced at some point in their lives realize that they cannot control what they feel, that they can control their own body. The tattoo becomes a way of reclaiming their own narrative. She decides what will be seen, where it will be touched, which story will be told. It is as if she is saying to the world, "You did not define me. I choose how I present myself." However, behind this choice, there may exist a pain so deep that only a radical gesture like marking the skin forever can translate it. The gaze that falls on these marks also carries psychological weight. When someone admires a tattoo without realizing the pain it hides, they risk touching invisible wounds. Many times, those who see only the drawing do not understand that that body is not just a canvas, but an open diary, an emotional archive carved in living flesh. It is a secret code that, when read with sensitivity, reveals much more than words could say. Freud reminds us that nothing the unconscious creates is by chance, not even the most delicate drawing, not even the simplest choice of a tattooed phrase. This relationship between pain and aesthetics is what makes tattoos so powerful. They are, at the same time, the expression of an apparent freedom and the silent testimony of something that still needs to be healed. It is a paradox. While the tattoo seems to say, "I overcame it," it also whispers, "I still remember." The trauma, when transformed into art, gains a veneer of beauty, but does not disappear. It only dresses itself in something that seems less threatening. The tattoo, in this sense, is not just an adornment, but a coded confession. Finally, it is important to understand that, for many women, the tattoo is the only way to exist visibly. Freud said that what is not brought to consciousness returns as fate. By tattooing their pains, they are not only expressing art, but trying to prevent the past from silently devouring them. It is as if every color, every line, were a pact with their own survival, a way of saying to the world, "I am here, even if I have to scream without words." Beauty is, many times, the most delicate of defenses. Freud observed that the human ego creates masks to survive when the weight of pain is unbearable. In the female case, these masks can take the form of carefully chosen tattoo symbols of strength, inspiring phrases, images that evoke power or spirituality. At first glance, all this seems like an expression of empowerment. But, looking deeper, we see something different. The tattoo, in many cases, is not a simple ornament, but a wall against the emotional chaos that lives inside. A woman who carries a mandala on her arm or a phoenix on her chest, for example, may be saying much more than she imagines. The mandala, for Freud, could be interpreted as an attempt to restore a lost inner order, while the phoenix represents rebirth after destruction. These choices are not just aesthetic, but unconscious responses to experiences that left emotional marks. When someone asks about the meaning of the tattoo, she answers with phrases like, "It represents my strength," or "my new beginning." But in fact, that image is an embellished scar, a memory turned into something visually powerful so as not to be forgotten and, at the same time, not to be fully felt. The formation of this aesthetic armor is a classic defense mechanism described by Freud as reactive formation. The ego builds an appearance of strength precisely to hide a feeling of fragility. Thus, the woman who appears to be unshakable may be the same one who, inside, fights daily against memories of abandonment, rejection, or abuse. The tattoo, in this context, is not just an adornment, but a symbolic extension of this apparent strength. It becomes a message not only to the world, but to herself, a way of reaffirming that she survived, even if that survival is painful. There is something paradoxical in this. The beauty of the tattoo attracts gazes, but at the same time, serves as a shield against true intimacy. It seduces, but also distances. When someone admires the art, they do not realize that behind that aesthetic, there is a trauma that was never worked through. It is like looking at a magnificent house from the outside without knowing that inside, the walls are cracked. Freud reminds us that everything that is not worked out emotionally returns in other forms, and many tattoos are, indeed, symbolic expressions of these inner ghosts. The tattoo is also a way of controlling one's own narrative. Many women who have lived through situations where they felt powerless find, in the act of tattooing, a chance to reclaim power over their own body. It is as if each stroke says, "Here, I am in control." However, this attempt at control often hides a void. Aesthetics becomes a form of illusion, a way of giving the impression of freedom, when, in fact, it is a response to wounds that still hurt. Beauty does not emerge as an innocent ornament, but as a desperate effort not to fall apart. Freud also spoke of substitutive formations when a repressed desire, An unresolved trauma or an emotional need emerges disguised as something different, something acceptable. The delicate phrase about self-love tattooed on the arm may, in fact, be the unconscious way of dealing with the fact that this woman never received true love. The image of the warrior goddess may be a constant reminder that she had to become strong because no one protected her. In each stroke, there's a request for recognition, but camouflaged in beauty. The problem arises when others look only at the surface. Those who see only the aesthetics, without realizing the emotional weight it carries, risk interpreting everything as a simple matter of style. And this is dangerous because these tattoos are not just beauty, but emotional codes. They are messages that say, I survived, but I'm still learning to exist without pain. When you compliment a tattoo, perhaps you are unknowingly complimenting a tomb, a memory of something that almost destroyed that woman. Finally, understanding that the tattoo is often a psychological armor is an invitation to look beyond the skin. It is not about judging or interpreting each symbol literally, but recognizing that, behind the art, there may be a silent pain. Freud said that the unconscious speaks through symbols, and tattoos, in many cases, are exactly that, the secret language of a soul that learned to hide its scars under a veneer of beauty. She enters the room and everyone feels something different. Her presence is magnetic, almost hypnotic. The steady gaze, the upright posture, the way she occupies space without asking permission. Everything about her screams strength. But Freud would remind us to ask an uncomfortable question. Is this strength genuine, or just the other side of a fragility so deep it had to be camouflaged? The woman you see as independent and uncheckable may be just the result of a childhood where vulnerability was a luxury she could never afford. From an early age, she may have learned that too many feelings were dangerous. Maybe she cried and no one listened. Maybe she asked for comfort and received silence. Or worse, maybe she was taught to believe that emotion is weakness. When a child grows up without a safe space to be fragile, she develops armor to survive. And as an adult, this armor is mistaken for power. Every tattoo, every symbol stamped on her skin is a piece of this emotional shield, a silent declaration that she resisted what could have destroyed her. The sensuality you notice is often just a psychic reaction to the fear of abandonment. She learned to charm so she wouldn't be discarded, to be desired so she wouldn't be ignored. The tattoo, in this context, is more than decoration. It is a signature of survival. The phoenix, the mystical gaze, the phrases about freedom, all of this is a carefully constructed narrative so no one sees the internal chaos. She may believe each design is just an aesthetic choice, but between the lines, she is retelling a story of pain she cannot remember without falling apart. Freud would call this the compulsion to repeat. The unconscious recreates the same dramas from the past, hoping to finally master them. That is why she seeks intense relationships, emotional games, situations of tension. It is not because she likes drama, but because it is there, in conflict, that she feels alive. Peace sounds like a threat to her. Silence, for someone who has experienced abandonment, is a dangerous echo. So even when she finds someone who loves her calmly and securely, she may sabotage, run away, or build walls, not out of malice, but because she does not know how to exist without the armor she built. The tattoo often symbolizes this internal struggle. When she chooses a phrase about strength or freedom, she is speaking both to the world and to herself. It is as if she needs to see on her skin what she cannot feel in her heart. The image of a warrior tattooed on the thigh, the phrase, "I am enough," on the arm. All of this is a silent scream from a girl who once did not feel enough to be loved unconditionally. You look at the design and see beauty. She looks and remembers the internal battle she fought not to collapse. The paradox is that this armor also seduces. You man feel attracted to this apparent strength, to this woman who seems to know exactly who she is and what she wants. But as you get closer, you realize there is something impenetrable there. No matter how much you try to offer care and presence, something always slips away. Because genuine affection, the kind that arrives without demands, disarms the character she created to survive. And when someone threatens to remove her armor, even if it is out of love, she feels panic, as if exposed to mortal danger. The truth is that the strength you admire is often just a reflection of the fear she carries. She is intense because she learned that being invisible hurts more than being desired. She is confident because she cannot allow anyone to see the cracks that run through her. The tattoo, in this sense, is painted armor, a wall that ironically also attracts gazes. You may think you are loving a strong woman, but in reality, you are touching the surface of a wounded child who screams behind drawings and phrases. Understanding this is not simple. It requires seeing beyond aesthetics, beyond the persona she shows the world. It requires realizing that, many times, this woman who seems so free is actually trapped inside a prison made of expectations, traumas, and unresolved stories. The tattoos are the walls of this prison, beautifully decorated, but still walls. And for those looking from the outside, the big trap is mistaking this fortress for freedom. You offer comfort, and she retreats. You say you are there, whole, present, and she changes tone, closes off, mocks, until she becomes cold. You ask yourself, did I do something wrong? And Freud would answer, yes, you loved her truly. For many women marked by trauma, love is not a home, it is a minefield. Every gesture of care, every word of affection triggers old memories where love meant pain, abandonment, and disappointment. The mere fact that you do not represent danger can paradoxically be what terrifies her. She does not know what to do with calm love. To someone who grew up learning that affection and pain always walk together, peace seems suspicious. Consistency sounds like a trap. The peace you offer is interpreted as the silence before the final blow. Freud called this narcissistic defense. The ego creates barriers to avoid collapse, preventing the genuine experience of love because it fears being torn apart again. It is not that she does not want to be loved. It is that she does not know how to handle a love that does not demand suffering as proof of her existence. You praise her essence, and she changes the subject. You assure her you will not leave, and she invents reasons to push you away. It is not personal. She is not running from you. She is running from herself. Because accepting your love would mean admitting she no longer needs the armor, that she can shed the strong and sensual persona she built throughout life. And for someone who spent years protecting herself, this emotional nakedness is unbearable. Loving healthily requires dismantling walls, and for her, that seems more dangerous than staying alone. This pattern connects to Freud's concept of compulsion to repeat. She repeats the emotional drama, even unconsciously, because she believes that only within chaos will she find something true. If there is no conflict, she creates one. If there is no insecurity, she sabotages herself, because it was in the middle of chaos that she learned to exist. You offer peace, but she only recognizes love where there is pain. The wounded mind needs the game, the uncertainty, the intensity to believe it is alive. And what happens when you offer everything she has always said she wanted? She gets scared. She feels exposed. Because calm and true love does not require performance, and she is used to living according to roles, masks. Without drama, she sees herself as without purpose. Without the power game, she feels she loses the identity she built. Genuine love disorganizes her because deep down it forces her to face what she always avoided: the original wound, the child who was never fully loved. You may feel rejected, think you are not enough. But understand, she does not push you away for lack of love. She pushes you away because she does not know how to receive something so pure. For someone who lived affection mixed with pain, receiving care without wounds seems false, unreal. So she tests, provokes, sabotages, in an unconscious attempt to recreate the familiar scenario where love and suffering were always together. If you do not hurt her, she thinks love will leave at any moment because she never learned that love can be safe. The paradox is cruel. You love her without masks, and it is exactly that which makes her run away. Because being truly seen is like having the tattoos ripped off those marks, she chose to tell her story of pain in a beautiful way. Your love, by being true, threatens the defenses she built with so much effort. And for someone who spent a lifetime believing she must fight to be loved, receiving love without effort is a different kind of pain. A mirror reflecting a fragility she tries to deny. Deep down, she wants to be loved, yes. But she wants to be loved in a way that does not destroy her, that does not require her to always pretend to be strong. The problem is that she still does not know how. And you, no matter how willing you are, will not cross these barriers with kindness alone. Because for her, even the truest affection seems a prelude to loss. Freud would say, what is not brought to consciousness returns as destiny. And until this pain is faced, she will keep repeating the script, running from the only kind of love that could finally save her. There is a brutal difference between displaying a tattoo and hiding inside it. At first glance, you may see only beauty, well-crafted lines, powerful symbols, inspiring phrases. But for Freud, what looks like expression is often containment. The tattoo, in this case, is not just an act of aesthetic freedom, but a suffocated cry, painted armor so no one notices the pain that still burns. When the mind is wounded and finds no space to process the pain, the body becomes the canvas of a psychic theater. Every line etched on the skin is a phrase that was not spoken, not because words were lacking, but because saying it could be unbearable. Look at a woman with tattoos and ask yourself, what story is this trying to tell? Perhaps what you see as empowerment is, in fact, a wall. Behind the phoenix, the mandala, the mystical eye, there may be a story of abandonment, abuse, loneliness. Freud called this substitutive formations, when repressed desire or unbearable pain does not disappear, but returns disguised as symbol, art, aesthetics. The tattoo becomes the unconscious way to give shape to internal chaos, to make pain bearable because somehow it gains contour, design, color. This woman may say she feels stronger, that each tattoo is a mark of overcoming. And that is not untrue, but maybe it is only part of her. Often, what we call strength is just a reaction to the fear of falling apart. Freud spoke of reactive formation, where the ego builds the opposite of what it feels to avoid collapse. The tattoo of courage may hide a story of fragility. The phrase about self-love may reflect someone who fought her entire life to believe she deserves love. It is an aesthetics of survival, a beautiful shield to cover wounds no one sees. It is common that, while admiring the beauty of a tattoo, we forget it can also be a tomb, a memory that could not be forgotten, a trauma transformed into art just not to suffocate. This aesthetic transformation is, in a way, an attempt to give order to chaos. If the pain cannot be erased, then it is beautified. That is why so many tattoos carry symbols of rebirth, wings, flames, phrases of resistance. They are like amulets, silent screams of someone who survived but still does not know if she truly won. However, there is a trap. When beauty becomes disguise, it also becomes prison. The woman who displays her pain in tattoos may begin to believe she is only that her story is reduced to the narrative of suffering transformed into art. She shows a character, an edited version of herself that the world admires. But that does not fully correspond to what she feels. She herself may get lost in the character, believing that strength, that impenetrable aesthetics, is all that exists. The danger is that by creating such a beautiful mask, she does not allow anyone to see the chaos behind it. And here arises a reflection Freud would certainly make. The body speaks what the mouth cannot say. Tattooing the skin is often an act of resistance to forgetting, a way to eternalize something that cannot be narrated in words. It is as if the pain needed to be recorded in ink so as not to dissolve the identity of the one who feels it. But instead of fraying, this inscription can become an anchor. Every curious look at the tattoo can reopen a wound. Every innocent compliment may, unintentionally, reinforce the memory of the reason that led that person to mark herself forever. You may approach such a woman and believe you are knowing a story of freedom, empowerment, pure aesthetics. But in reality, you are facing a secret code, a set of symbols that exist only because, at some point, there were not enough words to explain what she lived. And it is not your role to decipher this code without permission, because each tattoo is, above all, a sacred territory, a way the unconscious found to scream without speaking. Touching this territory superficially is like invading a temple without understanding its sacredness. If you really want to see beyond the surface, you need to learn to respect the silence that exists between the lines of the skin. You need to understand that often what you call art is actually an emotional defense, a sophisticated way of saying, "Do not hurt me." The tattoo, in this sense, is like a decorated wall, armor painted delicately so no one notices that the pain still throbs underneath. It is necessary to look deeply, not to decipher, but to recognize the humanity, the struggle, and the vulnerability that each stroke carries. In the end, the tattoo is more than ink. It is memory, it is scar, it is survival. It is not vanity. It is an attempt to transform pain into something bearable, perhaps even something beautiful. But this beauty has a weight only those who carry marked skin know. And if you, when looking at this woman, see only a decorated body, you will be missing the chance to see the soul that silently still asks to be heard. If you have come this far, you must have realized that tattoos are much more than aesthetics. They can be the secret map of a soul that learned to transform pain into art, trauma into symbols, and silence into color. Freud reminds us that what is not brought to consciousness returns as destiny. And perhaps that is why so many women carry on their skin stories that could never be told. The butterfly, the phoenix, the phrase about freedom, none of this is just a drawing. It is resistance. They are marks that, behind beauty, hide invisible battles, suffocated screams, and a desperate desire to be seen without being destroyed. If this video awakens something in you, do not keep it to yourself. Like, share, and comment which part touched you the most. I want to know your perspective. And if you want to keep exploring the hidden side of the mind, emotions, and the female unconscious, subscribe now to the channel. Activate the bell, because the next videos will take you even deeper into this journey between pain, freedom, and the secrets of the human psyche. Some think this is the end, but be careful. The war is not over yet. There are still things left unsaid. These 2 videos before you are not here by chance. And what if everything you believe about yourself is just a reflection of someone else's gaze? Click now on one of the videos beside and start breaking this mirror. You will have to risk the click. So, which one will you choose?